So for my evidence-based strategy, I was at a placement in middle school during ESY, so unfortunately I couldn't attend any meetings, but I was able to sit down with my cooperating teacher and talk about some of the students that we had during ESY. Luckily, she did have some of these students during the school year, so she was familiar with them and able to share some insight on meetings that she had with some of the students during the year. And so one of the students that we talked about was actually the focus learner that I had during my lesson plan when Pat came. And with this student, one of the evidence-based strategies that they used was Pictello and using social stories to help this student during the year. Unfortunately, the student had a really tough time transitioning from 5th grade into 6th grade last year. So he went from an elementary school to the current middle school, and he had a very tough time with that transition. So unfortunately, for like the first month of school, he was not coming to school. So that was a very difficult challenge for the student and the teacher and the family as well. So unfortunately, the student barely came to school at all until October of last year, and then he started coming every day. So what they had to do for him was find a way to transition him from home to school. And luckily, Dad and the mom were very supportive, and Dad was actually dropping him off at school. But in order to get him in the car, he was struggling to even get him to go to school. And so what they worked on was a Pictello. So that was kind of one of the evidence-based strategies that they used, was using Pictello and developing a transition story for him to get him to come to school. So what they would do is play the Pictello at home, transition him to school, and then play a different transition video or story once they got to school. And this kind of stemmed from some major anxiety that he had from school transportation. So something happened on the bus, I think in 5th grade or at the beginning of 6th grade. And so that gave the student major anxiety, and that was kind of the trigger point of why he was having such a hard time coming to school, and then that's why Dad had to start driving him. So it was taking Dad hours, and the student wasn't coming. He would walk around the building, but he wouldn't come into the building. So my cooperating teacher said they were trying different ways to try and get him into school with being very firm and different things, but it was still not successful. So once they made a little bit more of the Pictello stories, transitioning him through those, but then they also used an adaptive bike, and that made a huge difference because once he got on the bike, he was strapped in because he was buckled, and then his feet were buckled. So they were able to transition him from the car outside of the building to the school through the adaptive bike. So that was super helpful. So kind of between Pictello and finding that adaptive bike, they were able to get him successfully into school from October all the way through the end of the school year. And so during ESY, that's what we would do as well, is because that worked and was so successful, as soon as Dad got there and dropped him off, the student would get on the bike, and then he would bike inside and go straight to the classroom. And so that was just a familiar strategy, and he understood when he got to school he could get on the bike, and when he left school he got on the bike as well. But kind of as ESY progressed, because it was 12 days, he actually was able to transition in and out of the school just with walking and not with the bike. So that was super cool to see that this strategy was working. And between the bike and Pictello, he was able to start walking inside the building and walking in and out, transitioning. So that was super cool to see. And I kind of played around too with Pictello because I wasn't familiar with that, and we worked on making a Pictello for summer school because not only was the transition piece tough for him at the beginning of the school year, but then during ESY he was having a really hard time with just the transitions within the classroom and was trying to bite or pinch the teachers and other TAs. So we used a Pictello story to help him with that. So kind of a platform or an app that he's familiar with was able to help him through ESY. So it kind of sounds like what they're doing for the student at school is working. So I kind of want to keep in touch with my cooperating teacher and see if it's successful again once the school year starts this year. So that is my evidence-based strategy.